I was arguing with a coffee mug when my phone started vibrating. Not ringing. Vibrating. That low, impatient buzz that feels like someone tapping your shoulder. Not hard, not urgent. Just enough to make you look up. I almost ignored it. The mug had a crack down the side, the kind that leaks just enough to be annoying but not enough to throw it away. I'd had it for years. I remember thinking I really should replace this. That thought still bothers me. Because it means right up until that moment my brain thought the future was normal. When I picked up my phone, I saw my daughter's name. Clara. She never calls in the morning. "Mom," she said. Something was wrong with her voice. It didn't sound broken. Sounded controlled. Like she was holding her breath. "Where are you?" she asked. "At home," I said. "Why?" There was a pause. Too long. Long enough for my chest to tighten. "You need to sit down," she said. That's when I knew. Not what had happened. Not who it involved. Just the knowing. There's a moment right before your life changes, where everything feels slightly unreal. Like the world is still moving but you've stepped half an inch out of it. "Mom," she said again, softer this time. Dad collapsed at work. I remember gripping the counter so hard my knuckles hurt. "Is he okay?" I asked even though I already knew the answer. Another pause. "They tried," she said. "You need to come to the hospital." By the time I got there, my husband was already gone. They said it was sudden. A massive heart attack. No warning. No pain. People always say that last part like it's supposed to help. He nodded. Signed papers. Thanked people I don't remember meeting. At the funeral, I stood next to the casket and accepted condolences from people who kept calling me strong. "You're holding up so well," they said. Smiled. He nodded. Played the part. But here's the truth I didn't say out loud. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't love him. I did. But beneath the shock, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the casseroles piling up in my fridge, there was something else. Relief. And that terrified me. Because relief isn't what you're supposed to feel when your husband of 38 years dies. I told myself it was temporary. That grief would come crashing in later. That I was just numb. But 3 days later, when a plain white envelope showed up in my mailbox, something in my stomach dropped. No return address. My name typed neatly on the front. Inside was a letter from a bank I barely recognized. Safe deposit box. In his name. With mine listed second. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that letter. The house unbearably quiet. My husband had always handled the money. Every account. Every bill. Every decision. I trusted him. And now I was being invited to open something he'd never once mentioned in nearly 4 decades of marriage. I folded the letter slowly, my hands shaking. Whatever was in that box was never meant for me to see. And somehow, I already knew my life would never be the same after I did. The bank sat on the corner of a busy street, all glass and steel, the kind of building that looks clean and honest from the outside. I remember thinking how strange that was. How something so polished could hold so many secrets. Inside, everything smelled faintly of metal and disinfectant. The air felt colder than it should have been. Not physically, emotionally. Like the building itself knew why people came here. A woman at the front desk asked how she could help me. I slid the letter across the counter. Her eyes softened immediately. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, in a voice that told me she'd said those words many times before. "I'll have the manager assist you." Her name was Evelyn. Mid-50s. Professional. The kind of woman who knows how to keep her emotions neatly tucked away. She led me down a hallway past offices with frosted glass doors and framed photos of smiling executives. At the end of the hall was a heavy vault door. It opened with a sound that made my stomach twist. Inside, the walls were lined with rows of small metal boxes, each one identical, each one holding a life someone thought they understood. "This is the box," Evelyn said, sliding one out. "Take your time. I'll give you privacy." She handed me the key. My hand shook as I took it. I carried the box into a small room with a table and a chair. That was it. No window. No distractions. Just me and whatever my husband had been hiding. I sat there for a long moment without opening it. My mind drifted to the Tuesdays. Every single Tuesday at exactly 2 p.m. For nearly 40 years. Rain, snow, illness. Didn't matter. He never missed it. I used to tease him about it. "You're more loyal to that bank than to me," I'd joke. He'd smile. Kiss my forehead. Say, "Someone has to keep us safe." I believed him. I turned the key. The lid opened with a dull click. Inside were folders. Neatly stacked. Carefully labeled. My heart started racing. The first folder I pulled out was thick. Thick. Opened it. Numbers stared back at me. Statements. Losses. Page after page of red. These weren't accounts I recognized. Not joint. Not shared. Only his name. I flipped through faster, my breath coming shallow. This wasn't budgeting. This wasn't planning. This was damage. The second folder made my hands go cold. Loans. Against our house. Not 1. 3. Dates spanning years. Signatures that weren't mine. Felt dizzy. The third folder almost slipped from my fingers. Credit cards. My name printed across the top. My social security number. My signature. I hadn't signed anything. 15 cards. All maxed out. I stared at the pages, my vision blurring. My husband hadn't just lied to me. He had used me. At the bottom of the box was an envelope. Cream-colored. My name written in his handwriting. That's when the room felt too small. That's when the air felt heavy. Whatever was inside that envelope wasn't just an explanation. It was a confession. And I knew before I opened it that nothing about my marriage would survive what I was about to read. I didn't open the envelope right away. I sat there with it in my hands, tracing my name with my thumb like it might burn me if I pressed too hard. His handwriting was unmistakable. Careful. Controlled. The same handwriting he used to label file folders and grocery lists. The same handwriting I'd trusted for nearly 40 years. I remember thinking if he wrote this, then he knew. Knew this day would come. Knew I'd be sitting in this room alone, trying to understand how my life unraveled without me noticing. I opened the envelope. The paper inside was folded once. Just one sheet. That alone felt wrong. How do you explain decades of lies on one page? "Lena," it started. Seeing my name like that, written by him, knowing what I now knew, made my chest tighten. "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. And you've opened the box." No denial. No pretending. "I'm sorry." That was the first line. For words that felt insultingly small. He wrote about a decision he made years ago. One investment. One risk he was sure would fix everything. He said he believed it would secure our future. That it would give us more time. More freedom. Failed. And instead of telling me, he tried to fix it. Quietly. Desperately. "I thought I could recover," he wrote. "I thought if I worked harder, moved money around, borrowed temporarily, I could make it right before you ever had to know." Borrowed. I laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. He hadn't borrowed. He had stolen. The letter went on. He admitted to the loans. The cards. Using my name. "I did it to protect you," he wrote. "To keep you from worrying." My hands started shaking. Protect me. That word felt twisted now. By the time I reached the end of the letter, my heart felt hollow. "We're probably bankrupt," he wrote. "The house may be lost. Your credit is ruined." Then this. "I know you'll hate me. You should." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Hate would have been easier. Hate would have let me simplify him into something ugly and distant. But hate didn't erase the memories. The man who held my hand during childbirth. Who sat with me through my mother's funeral. Who danced with me in the kitchen when no one was watching. That man existed. And so did this one. Both were real. I folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. Then I put everything back into the box. The folders. Papers. The proof. When I walked out of the room, my spine was straight. The bank manager looked at me and asked if I was okay. "No," I said. "But I will be." And I meant it. Because grief wasn't the only thing waiting for me outside that bank. There was anger. There was betrayal. And there was something else beginning to form. Resolve. When I got home, my son Aaron was already there. He was pacing the living room, phone in hand, eyes bloodshot. "I found something," he said. "So did I replied. I laid the copies across the table. And as he read, I watched the moment his father stopped being just his dad. "Mom," he whispered. "This is bad." "I know. How are you so calm?" I sat down across from him, folded my hands, and said the only honest thing I could. "Because panic won't save us. And pretending this didn't happen won't either." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. That night, lying in the bed I'd shared with Daniel for decades, I stared at the ceiling. Not crying. Not sleeping. Just replaying every Tuesday afternoon. Every kiss on the forehead. Every time he told me not to worry. And for the first time, I wondered how long he'd been lying to himself too. The first person who looked at me like I was lying was my own daughter. Not a stranger. Not a banker. Not a lawyer. My daughter. She stood in my kitchen, arms crossed tight across her chest, eyes red and shining with something that wasn't grief anymore. It was disbelief. "You're wrong," she said. "You have to be." I hadn't even finished explaining everything yet. "I have the documents," I said gently. "I have his letter." "That doesn't mean what you think it means," she shot back. "Dad wouldn't do this. He loved us." Those words landed harder than anything else so far. 'Cause I knew he loved us. And that was the problem. Love didn't stop him. "I'm not saying he didn't love us," I said carefully. "I'm saying he made choices that destroyed us." She shook her head, tears spilling over now. "You're grieving," she said. "You're confused. You're angry. You're ruining how people remember him." There it was. I wasn't a widow anymore. I was a threat to his memory. She left that night without hugging me. And she didn't call the next day. Or the day after that. That was when I learned something no one prepares you for. Sometimes telling the truth doesn't make you brave. Makes you lonely. The lawyer I met the following week didn't hesitate. "This is financial abuse," she said plainly. "And identity theft." The words hit me like a slap. Abuse. I had never thought of myself that way. Never pictured my marriage in that category. But as she spoke, about control masked as care, secrecy disguised as protection, I felt something unsettling settle into place. Daniel didn't just handle the finances. He controlled them. He didn't just protect me from stress. He removed my ability to see reality. And I had helped him do it by trusting him completely. The lawyer warned me it would be ugly. Banks don't like admitting fault. Creditors don't forgive easily. And families fracture. She was right. Friends started acting strange. Conversations went quiet when I walked into rooms. People avoided eye contact. No one said it out loud, but I could feel it. "Why are you doing this now? Why can't you just let him rest? Why are you dragging his name through the mud?" At 64 years old, with my savings gone and my credit in ruins, I did something I never thought I'd do again. I looked for a job. Bookstores. Face. Anywhere that would hire someone rebuilding from nothing. That's how I met Ruth. She owned a small bookstore downtown. Silver hair. Sharp eyes. No patience for nonsense. She looked at my resume, then at me. "You've been married almost 40 years, she said. "Why now?" Could have lied. I didn't. "My husband died," I said. "And I just found out he destroyed our finances." She studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled. "When can you start?" That job didn't fix my life. But it gave me something I desperately needed. Place to stand. A place where I wasn't a widow. Or a liar. Or a problem. Just a woman showing up. And that was when the first stranger approached me between the shelves and whispered 5 words that would change everything. "You too." The courtroom was quieter than I expected. No dramatic music. No shouting. Just the sound of my own breathing reminding me I was still alive. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the place where the truth either survives or gets buried under paperwork and excuses. I sat at the wooden table beside my lawyer, my hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to keep them from shaking. Across the room sat the bank's legal team. Clean suits, calm faces, confident posture. They looked comfortable. I didn't. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. And just like that, my marriage, what I thought it was, became evidence. The bank's lawyer spoke first. He was young, bullish, confident in a way that comes from never having everything collapse at once. He talked about benefit, about marriage, about shared responsibility. He said I lived in the house, that I enjoyed the lifestyle, that even if I didn't sign the papers, I must have known. Each sentence felt like a small accusation. When my lawyer stood up, her voice was calm, steady, precise. She presented the forged signatures, the handwriting expert's report, the separate accounts, a letter. Then she turned to me. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "when did you first learn about these loans?" I swallowed. "After my husband died," I said. "When I opened the safe deposit box." "In nearly 4 decades of marriage," she continued, "did your husband ever discuss taking loans against your home?" "No." "Did you receive any of the money from those loans?" "No." "Did you sign the applications?" "No." Then came cross-examination. The bank's lawyer stood and walked slowly toward me. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "isn't it true you trusted your husband with the finances?" "Yes," I said. "So you chose not to be involved?" I met his eyes. "I trusted him," I said. "I didn't choose to be deceived." He pressed harder. "But you benefited from the marriage. You lived in the home those loans were taken against." "Yes," I said. "The home my husband and I bought together 40 years ago. The one he put at risk without my knowledge or consent." There was a pause. He asked the question I'd been asking myself for months. "You expect this court to believe that in 38 years, you never suspected anything?" The room felt very still. Took a breath. "My husband was an accountant," I said. "He was organized, careful, trusted. I believed him when he told me not to worry." Was that naive? Maybe. But naivete is not consent to fraud. The judge called a recess. I sat on a hard bench in the hallway while my son paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. "You did great, Mom," he said. I nodded, but my thoughts weren't on the testimony. They were on my daughter, on the silence between us, on the possibility that even if I won this case, I might lose her forever. When we were called back in, the judge didn't waste time. He ruled in my favor. The loans were void. The liens removed. My son squeezed my hand. We'd won. But as I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't feel relief. Felt hollow. Because winning didn't erase the betrayal. And it didn't prepare me for the call I'd receive that night. The one that would prove my husband's secrets weren't finished destroying lives. The phone rang just after midnight. I almost didn't answer. Something about late-night calls trains your body to brace for impact. I stared at the screen until it stopped buzzing. Then started again. My daughter's name. Nora. My heart dropped. "Mom," she said. Her voice was different this time. Not angry. Not defensive. Broken. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to listen all the way through." I sat down slowly. "Okay," I said. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, uneven and shaky. "After the hearing today," she said, "I went to the bank." Closed my eyes. "I needed to prove you were wrong," she continued. "I needed to see it for myself. I thought, if I could just show you there was another explanation, we could go back to how things were." Her voice cracked. "But there wasn't." She told me about the accounts, the records, the dates. Then she said the words I wasn't ready for. "He used my name too." I felt the air leave my lungs. "There's a credit card," she whispered. "I never opened it. I never saw it. But it's there. $23,000. My credit is ruined." For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she broke down completely. I should have believed you, she sobbed. I should have listened. He was my dad. I pressed my palm against my forehead, tears finally spilling over. I know, I said softly. I know. That night Nora came over. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she'd accused me of lying just weeks earlier. We didn't fight. We didn't defend him. Talk about who he was to us, about how love and harm can exist in the same person, about how betrayal hurts more when it comes wrapped in familiarity. Healing didn't come with forgiveness, came with truth. Over the next few weeks we worked together. Lawyers, credit bureaus, forms that felt endless. My son stepped in quietly, steadily, never once questioning me. And at the bookstore something strange started happening. Women began to linger. They pretend to browse, then ask questions that weren't really about books. One afternoon a woman whispered, "Do you have anything on financial abuse in marriage?" I walked her to the shelf. Then, without planning to, I said, "I've been through it." She looked at me like I'd just handed her oxygen. We talked for an hour. When she left, she hugged me. "Thank you for believing me," she said. After she walked out, Ruth looked at me from behind the counter. "You're good at that," she said. "At what?" "Listening. Believing. Making people feel less crazy." I thought about Nora. About myself. About all the years I'd been told not to worry. "I know what it's like not to be believed," I said. And in that moment something shifted. Because what had broken me was starting to connect me to others. And I didn't yet realize how far that connection would go, or how much it would change the ending of my story. The first meeting was supposed to be small. Just a few chairs, pot of coffee, nothing official. I almost canceled it. I stood in the back room of the bookstore staring at the circle of folding chairs, thinking, who am I to do this? I wasn't a therapist. I wasn't an expert. I was just a woman whose life had been quietly dismantled. But then the door opened, and one woman walked in. Then another. By the time we started, there were 9 of us. 9 women sitting in a circle, hands wrapped around warm mugs, eyes filled with stories that looked painfully familiar. No one rushed to speak. Silence settled first. Then someone cleared her throat. "My husband says I'm bad with money," she said. "So he handles everything." My stomach tightened. Another woman nodded. "Mine says he's protecting me from stress." A third whispered, "I thought I was crazy for feeling something was wrong." When it was my turn, I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them about the Tuesdays, the safe deposit box, the forged signatures, the courtroom. I told them how it felt to trust someone completely, and realized too late that trust had been used as a weapon. "How did you stay strong?" one woman asked. I shook my head. "I didn't," I said honestly. I cried. Panic. I was terrified. I just kept moving forward anyway. Something in the room shifted after that. Shoulders dropped. Breath slowed. Stories poured out. Accounts drained without explanation. Loans taken temporarily. Questions met with anger or dismissal. Control disguised as care. Isolation disguised as love. By the time the meeting ended, no one wanted to leave. Neither did I. That group became a monthly thing. Then twice a month. 10 women turned into 15. 15 into 20. We shared resources, lawyer names, credit repair strategies, scripts for difficult conversations. But more than anything, we shared belief. "I thought it was just me," someone said one night. "It never is," I replied. Ruth watched it all quietly from the edges. One evening, after everyone left, she handed me a paper cup filled with cheap red wine. "You know what you're doing, right?" she said. I shook my head. "You're building something that didn't exist when you needed it." I laughed softly. "I didn't plan this." She smiled. "The most important things rarely are." That night, walking home under the streetlights, I thought about the life I'd been trying so desperately to get back to. The version of myself before the betrayal, before the loss. And for the first time I wondered if going back was the wrong goal. Maybe the point wasn't to return to who I had been. Maybe the point was to become someone new. Someone who asked questions. Someone who trusted her instincts. Someone who refused to stay quiet to protect someone else's comfort. But even as this new sense of purpose took root, there was still one place I hadn't returned to. One final step I hadn't taken. And when I did, it would mark the moment I truly chose myself. I didn't tell anyone where I was going that morning. Not my son. Not my daughter. Not even Ruth. Some things you have to do alone. The bank was on the other side of town. Not the one Daniel went to every Tuesday. A different one. One he'd never stepped foot in. I chose it on purpose. I wanted a place untouched by memory. As I pushed open the glass door, I felt my heart race. Not from fear, but from something closer to defiance. The kind that rises when you're done being careful with other people's expectations. The teller smiled politely. Asked how she could help. "I'd like to open an account," I said. "In your name?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. Then paused. "In my name only." She nodded, typing. As she asked routine questions. Address, phone number, employment. I felt something strange settle in my chest. Not sadness. Not anger. Ownership. When she slid the forms across the counter, I signed slowly. Deliberately. No rushing. No second-guessing. At the end, she looked up and smiled again. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mrs. Carter?" "Yes," I said. "I'd like to change the name on the account." Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. Took a breath. "My maiden name," I said. "Lena Morales." Saying it out loud felt like opening a window. That name belonged to the woman I was before marriage. Before I learned to hand over responsibility disguised as trust. Before silence became easier than questions. The teller nodded without judgment and made the change. When she handed me my receipt, it was small. Ordinary. But to me it felt monumental. I walked out of that bank with my head high. For the first time in a year, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I still had. My voice. My agency. My future. That night I told my children. Neither of them questioned it. My daughter smiled softly and said, "That suits you." And in that moment I realized something important. Reclaiming yourself doesn't erase the past. It reframes it. But even as I felt stronger than I had in months, I knew there was one last chapter still unfolding. Because the story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about meaning. And the lesson waiting at the end was bigger than me. The last thing I rebuilt wasn't my credit. It wasn't my savings. It wasn't even my home. It was my trust in myself. That took the longest. Months after the court case ended, after the paperwork slowed, after the crisis stopped screaming and started whispering, I realized something unsettling. The danger hadn't just been what my husband did. It was how easily I had disappeared inside that marriage. Not because he forced me to. Not because I was weak. But because I believed love meant letting go of control. For years I told myself I was lucky. That he was responsible. That I didn't need to worry about boring money stuff. What I didn't realize was that I was also giving up visibility. With agency. And once those are gone, it becomes very easy for someone else to decide your reality for you. The support group kept growing. Women of all ages. Different backgrounds. Same quiet fear. Some stayed married. Some left. Some were just beginning to ask questions. I never told anyone what to do. I only told them what I'd learned. That love should never require blindness. That trust should never demand silence. That protection without transparency is just another form of control. One evening, a young woman stayed behind after the meeting. She couldn't have been older than 35. Her hands shook as she spoke. "My husband handles all our money," she said. "He says I'm bad with numbers. That it's better if I don't look." She hesitated. "But something feels wrong." I took her hands in mine. "Trust that feeling," I said. "Ask questions. Look at the accounts." "What if I'm wrong?" she asked. What if I'm just being paranoid? I looked at her and told her the truth. Then you feel foolish for 5 minutes. And safe for the rest of your life. But if you're right and you don't look, you could lose everything. She came back a month later with documents. Her husband had been secretly funneling money into risky investments. Tens of thousands gone. She filed for divorce the next day. I'm terrified, she said. But I feel free. I understood that completely. My daughter's credit was eventually cleared. Slowly, painfully, but it was done. My son locked his savings into accounts only he could access. He learned early what I learned late. And me. I kept working at the bookstore. Kept running the group. Kept showing up. On quiet afternoons, I'd stand behind the counter and watch sunlight fall across the shelves, thinking about the woman I used to be. The one who thought safety came from not knowing. The one who believed love meant surrender. I don't hate my husband. I don't excuse him either. He was a man who loved deeply and failed catastrophically. Both things are true. But his choices don't get to define the rest of my life. Mine do. If you're listening to this and something in your chest feels tight, if the secrecy sounds familiar, if you've been told don't worry one too many times, please hear this. Asking questions is not betrayal. Looking at the truth is not disloyal. And protecting yourself does not mean you loved less. Means you finally loved yourself enough. I rebuilt. Not perfectly. Not easily. But honestly. And if I could do it after everything collapsed, so can you. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.